Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Near-death experience. Contact Report 246.
My next question relates to the freezing or shock freezing of all kinds of life forms. If, for example, a person is shock frozen for any reason, perhaps to overcome time, etc., then I assume that this person is in a kind of apparent death. This means, however, that the spiritual form does not leave the body, but remains in it until the time when the body is revived. Am I right in my assumption? To my knowledge, you yourself have used such methods in the past, have you not?
That is correct, as is your explanation. If the body of a material form of life would die through shock freezing, etc., or simply be abandoned by the spiritual form, then this spiritual form would not return to the corresponding body again, but would enter the afterlife realm, from where it would then enter an absolutely new body again for the purpose of reincarnation. Once a spirit form has left a body, it never returns to the body it has left, but without exception selects only the new body destined for the next life.
This also clarifies the stupid assertions of all those who say that they themselves or others have been clinically dead, seen the afterlife, etc., and yet have returned to the deceased body and revived it again.
This is nonsense if it is assumed that clinical death can be equated with actual death. The truth for such assertions is truthfully that the supposedly deceased were only in the state of a false death, in which the spiritual form remains in the body, while the material consciousness works underground, generating dreams, visions, etc. Apparent deaths are usually declared clinically dead by earthly physicians, but the whole body truthfully lives on only in a tremendously slowed-down functional state, which earthly physicians are not yet able to determine.
Contact Report 250.
Whereby the so-called supernatural, of course, does not exist in any way, because everything is always naturally explainable, and also naturally given. The supernatural exists only in the ignorance and the incomprehension of man, because he has no knowledge about all those things which he cannot understand and cannot explain himself. Truthfully, everything so-called supernatural is absolutely natural, and thus also classified according to the corresponding laws of spirit or matter, which are able to give an explanation for everything and everyone, whereby something supernatural becomes a fact of non-existence. Everything that can be grasped and perceived, everything that can be seen and heard, and everything that can be felt, recognized, experienced, etc., is always real and natural in every case, regardless of whether it takes place on a spiritual or material level, or on a medium level between spirit and matter, which is so often called the level of the supernatural or the supernatural by parapsychologists and esoterics who do not understand it.
A true word.
Contact Report 279.
Then we can master another question that comes up again and again. It's the problem of the light tunnel that's created when people die. So why do people who are close to death see a light tunnel? Again and again one hears or reads that dying people lying in agony see a shining light tunnel. What is the reason for this? You, who, in addition to almost 36 other professions, also learned the profession of a doctor, will certainly have an explanation for this, I think.
The answer can be found in the brain itself. If the brain is no longer sufficiently supplied with oxygen, and this is the case with agony, the nerve cells that guarantee vision begin to react uncontrollably. This produces the appearance of light rays or radiant light. Since more nerve cells are located in the center of the human field of vision than at the edges, the faked light appears much stronger in the center of the eye. This creates the actual tunnel effect, which we also call agony light and agony tunnel,
How is it then that in such moments any figures, people, and relatives, etc. are seen? In any case, this is repeatedly reported by people who were already in agony. Can it be that these people, who erroneously say that they were already dead and came back from the realm of the dead, vision these figures or people and relatives, etc., into the agony tunnel or light tunnel solely by their faith and their desires as well as by their imagination? That is what my reason tells me.
Which does not deceive you, for in fact it behaves as you have just expressed it.
Well then, I would just like to say that, according to my intellectual knowledge, it is impossible that when a person really dies, that he can then come back to life. This is precisely the case when the spirit form has actually left the material body, for a spirit form that has once escaped the body never returns to the dead body. Consequently, all statements and assertions of those who were supposedly dead and began to live again are false. I see the matter in such a way that all these people only lingered in a state of deep stagnation and thus had not yet crossed the threshold to death. They only stood at the threshold of death and fought for the survival of life and against death, as the term agony also says. Agony.
There is no need for further explanations, for you have called the facts as they correspond to reality. Discussion Board of FIGU, The Mission, Billy, Edward. Albert Meier, your questions to Billy Meier answered. Archive through August 28, 2011. Answer to question. From Door Knocker. Experiences during a near-death situation have nothing in common with real death and the following existence in the other world Yenseats. Such people have not more knowledge than before the accident, etc., but they are deeply impressed by the effects they have experienced during their near-death state. Falsely assuming that they had been on the other side of death, they lose their angst of death, and this fundamentally changes their view of life. Discussion Board of FIGU, The Mission, Billy, Edward Albert Meier. Your questions to Billy Meier answered. Archive through July 28, 2012. Answer to question from Door Knocker. Either a person is dead or not. You cannot place a person into a temporary state of physical death. Therefore, reports from near-death experiences (NDE) are always reports about the individual's thoughts, fantasies, etc. When the brain is lacking oxygen, seeing a tunnel of light, etc., is a normal effect. And when people who experienced a NDE are seeing a situation from above, this has to do with an increased activity of the consciousness powers, as it is the case in the agony phase of a dying person. FIGU Special Bulletin 38, FIGU Special Bulletin 038, Fine Matter also plays a very important role in regard to the near-death experience because when the purely rational reason is shut out through the dying process, and the seventh sense, the capability of perception, is put into its appropriate place, the perception capacity, which is usually repressed in the current life by the condition of rational reason, expands in regard to the fine matter realm. Thereby a border opens, for the human, to a window into that fine material world which extends very far above all that which can be perceived with the purely coarse material senses, with the eyes, the touch, the smell, the hearing and tasting through these heightened abilities of perception, through the sense of perception in regard to fine matter, clairvoyance, for example, emerges as a near-death experience, in such a way that the dying human views himself from a higher vantage point over his own body, or floating through the room and can also see what happens around him, what is being discussed, and what objects people carry or are present in the room in which the person is dying or in adjoining rooms, and so forth. The near-death experience is also a key to the reading of thoughts whereby the thoughts of the people standing around, or of those who are far removed, are perceived on a fine material basis. That happens especially in the deepest stages of dying, which correlates to a state of the least brain activity. This status is that of the entrance into death, and in this state the brain opens up to the human his concealed capabilities which are repressed in his current life. Every brain, therefore that of the human, as well as of all creatures, can be compared with technical transmission and receiving devices, because every organic brain is a transmitter and receiver for fine material energies and their forces, as well as their effects. Now, when a human dies, then, on the brink of death, he loses the connection to rational understanding, whereby that which pertains to the fine material realm gains power and produces electromagnetic energetic loads, which result from fine material thoughts and feelings which radiate explosively and can be perceived by other humans even at a great distance. As a rule, there are humans present who are closely mentally connected to the dying person. The persons concerned receive the dying human's units of information through fluidal, respectively, fine material electromagnetic vibrations, which are strong, fine material energy loads, and which conceal the information in themselves as force. Naturally, the wave frequencies of the fine material vibrations thereby play a decisive role, whereby not every human can therefore receive the same wave frequencies, and not everyone can tune his fine material senses to the same degree onto near or very distant impulses and information which are directed at him. Therefore, through the mental connection, there must be a certain similarity to the wave frequencies so that messages from dying ones or otherwise from fellow humans can be received, whether it is sounds, thoughts and feelings, or visionary images, and so forth. Interviews on the topics of spiritual teaching and mission German language booklet. Interview with Billy, 1998. There are people who claim they died and saw the beyond. Is it true that this really happens? Not in this sense. The people you speak of were not really dead. They may have been clinically dead, which means they no longer had discernible heart or brain activity. But as I said, this is only a clinical death, at which time the spirit form has not yet left the body, but still remains in it for a while. This means the comprehensive consciousness also stays in the physical body, although all vital signs may appear to be shut down. The comprehensive consciousness and the spirit form continue to remain with the body for a certain period which may last for seconds, minutes, or hours. Indeed, under certain circumstances, even years or decades. The latter, for instance, is the case for the survival of bodies that have been frozen instantly through cryology, during which time the consciousness continues to function. Such a condition, however, only occurs while the body is in its death throes, and for this reason the brain's activity is no longer detectable, even though it continues to function. At this time, images appear that are consistent with the individual's normal thinking and imagination patterns, but the images are as well imprinted by the comprehensive collective of the terrestrial human entities. While in this condition of profound death agony, these people are often capable also of emitting their consciousness, whereby they can suddenly view themselves from the outside while hovering above their own bodies and so forth. Light, darkness, and beloved people also frequently play a major role in this scenario, and the person in this stage of a death throe feels him or herself being led through dark channels and such into a light from where they do not ever want to leave again. Figu Special Bulletin 28 Figu Special Bulletin 0 Konterbeit.
Fine matter also plays a very important role in regard to the near-death experience because, when the purely rational reason is shut out through the dying process, and the seventh sense, the capability of perception, is put into its appropriate place, the perception capacity, which is usually repressed in the current life by the condition of rational reason, expands in regard to the fine matter realm. Thereby a border opens, for the human, to a window into that fine material world which extends very far above all that which can be perceived with the purely coarse material senses, with the eyes, the touch, the smell, the hearing and tasting. Through these heightened abilities of perception, through the sense of perception in regard to fine matter, clairvoyance, for example, emerges as a near-death experience, in such a way that the dying human views himself from a higher vantage point over his own body, or floating through the room, and can also see what happens around him, what is being discussed, and what objects people carry, or are present in the room in which the person is dying, or in adjoining rooms, and so forth. The near-death experience is also a key to the reading of thoughts, whereby the thoughts of the people standing around, or of those who are far removed, are perceived on a fine material basis. That happens especially in the deepest stages of dying, which correlates to a state of the least brain activity. This status is that of the entrance into death, and in this state, the brain opens up to the human his concealed capabilities, which are repressed in his current life.